Chapter 11. Aslan is nearer. Edmund, meanwhile, had been having a most disappointing time. When the dwarf had gone to get the sledge ready, he expected that the witch would start being nice to him, as she had been at their last meeting. But she said nothing at all. And when at last Edmund plucked up his courage to say, "Please, your majesty, could I have some Turkish delight?" You said, she answered. "Silence, fool!" Then she appeared to change her mind and said, as if to herself, "And yet it will not do to have that brat fainting on the way." And once more clapped her hands. Another dwarf appeared. "Bring the human creature food and drink," she said. The dwarf went away and presently returned, bringing an iron bowl with some water in it and an iron plate with a hunk of dry bread on it. He grinned in a repulsive manner as he set them down on the floor beside Edmund and said, "Turkish delight for the little prince, ha 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 ha!" "Take it away," Edmund said sulkily. "I don't want dry bread." But the witch suddenly turned on him with such a terrible expression on her face that he apologized and began to nibble at the bread, though it was so stale he could hardly get it down. "You may be glad of it before you taste bread again," said the witch. While he was still chewing away, the first dwarf came back and announced that the sledge was ready. The white witch rose and went out, ordering Edmund to go with her. The snow was again falling as they came into the courtyard, but she took no notice of it that Edmund sit beside her on the sledge. But before they drove off, she began marjoram, and he began bounding like an enormous dog to the side of the sledge. "Take with you the swiftest of your wolves, and go at once to the house of the beavers," said the witch, "and kill whatever you find there. If they are already gone, then make all the speed to the stone table. But do not be seen. Wait for me there in hiding. Meanwhile, I must go many miles to the west before I find a place where I can drive across the river. You may overtake these humans before they reach the stone table. You know what to do if you find them." "I hear and obey, O queen," growled the wolf, and immediately he shot away into the snow and darkness as quickly as a horse can gallop. In a few minutes he had called another wolf and was with him down on the dam and sniffing at the beaver's house. But of course they found it empty. It would have been a dreadful thing for the beavers and their children if the night had remained fine, for the wolves would have then been able to follow their trail, and 10 to 1 would have overtaken them before they had got to the cave. But now that the snow had begun again, the scent was cold, and even the footprints were covered up. Meanwhile, the dwarf whipped up the reindeer, and the witch and Edmund drove out under the archway and away into the darkness and the cold. This was a terrible journey for Edmund, who had no coat. Before they had been going 1/4 of an hour, all the front of him was covered with snow. He soon stopped trying to shake it off, because as quickly as he did that, a new lot gathered, and he was so tired. Soon he was wet to the skin, and oh, how miserable he was! It didn't look now as if the witch intended to make him a king. All the things he had said to make himself believe that she was good and kind, and that her side was really the right side, sounded to him silly now. He would have been given anything to meet the others at this moment, even Peter. The only way to comfort himself now was to try to believe that the whole thing was a dream, and that he might wake up at any moment. And as they went on, hour after hour, it did come to seem like a dream. This lasted longer than I could even describe if I wrote pages and pages about it. But I will skip on to the time when the snow had stopped and the morning had come and they were racing along in the daylight. And still they went on and on with no sound but the everlasting swish of the snow and the creaking of the reindeer's harness. And then at last the witch said, "What have we here? Stop!" And they did.